Anorexia nervosa is a complex disorder characterized primarily by extreme restriction of food intake and a distorted perception of body weight and shape. It is more than simply choosing to eat less. It is a condition in which the brain, body, and hormones interact in ways that reinforce restrictive behavior and make recovery challenging. At the core of anorexia is a disruption of the brain's reward and self-regulation circuits. Normally, eating provides a signal of reward through the release of dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and motivation. In individuals with anorexia, these reward pathways often respond differently, sometimes perceiving restriction or control over food as rewarding rather than food consumption itself. This altered response can reinforce extreme eating behaviors, making the body's natural hunger cues easier to ignore over time. Physiologically, chronic caloric restriction has wide-ranging effects on the body. Hormones that regulate hunger and energy balance, such as leptin and ghrelin, are significantly affected. Leptin, which signals satiety and energy sufficiency, becomes markedly reduced, leading to changes in metabolism, reproductive function, and even immune system regulation. Low leptin levels signal the brain that energy stores are insufficient, which can suppress reproductive hormones and affect bone density, mood, and overall physiological resilience. Ghrelin, the hormone that stimulates appetite, can fluctuate unpredictably, often resulting in suppressed hunger perception despite a caloric deficit. These hormonal changes create a feedback loop that both perpetuates restrictive eating and complicates efforts to normalize food intake. The central nervous system is also deeply affected by prolonged anorexia. Starvation alters neurotransmitter levels, including serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, which influence mood, anxiety, and cognitive processing. Many individuals with anorexia experience heightened anxiety, obsessive thoughts about food or weight, and difficulties with decision-making or concentration. These changes reinforce restrictive behaviors, as food may become associated with stress, fear, or loss of control rather than nourishment. Over time, the brain adapts to this low-energy state, lowering metabolic rate and altering neural signaling to prioritize survival over growth or cognitive function. Beyond the brain and hormones, anorexia impacts nearly every organ system. Cardiovascular function can be compromised due to reduced heart muscle mass and electrolyte imbalances. Gastrointestinal function often slows, resulting in constipation, bloating, or delayed gastric emptying. Bone health is particularly vulnerable. Prolonged low energy availability decreases bone mineral density and increases the risk of fractures. Muscle wasting occurs as the body breaks down protein for energy in the absence of adequate caloric intake. The interplay between these physical consequences and the brain's altered perception of food creates a complex cycle that is difficult to interrupt without a coordinated approach. Psychologically, anorexia is often reinforced by intense fear of weight gain and a rigid need for control. The disorder frequently coexists with anxiety, perfectionism, or obsessive-compulsive tendencies, which can intensify restrictive behavior. Social factors, including cultural pressures, peer influence, and exposure to dieting trends can further exacerbate these tendencies, making the condition not only a medical challenge, but also a social and environmental one. Intervention for anorexia requires addressing both the neurological and physiological components of the disorder. Reintroducing adequate nutrition gradually helps restore hormone balance, improve neurotransmitter function, and repair damaged tissues. Behavioral therapies and cognitive approaches aim to retrain the brain's reward and self-regulation systems, helping individuals develop a healthier relationship with food and body image. Support from family, peers, and healthcare professionals reinforces these changes, creating a safe environment in which the brain and body can recalibrate toward normal eating patterns. Ultimately, anorexia is a condition where the interplay of brain reward pathways, hormonal dysregulation, and physical consequences creates a self-perpetuating cycle of food restriction. Understanding the complexity of this interaction is essential for both prevention and recovery, emphasizing that anorexia is not simply a matter of willpower, but a deeply biological and psychological disorder that requires comprehensive intervention. Bulimia nervosa is an eating disorder characterized by recurrent episodes of binge eating followed by compensatory behaviors aimed at preventing weight gain, such as self-induced vomiting, excessive exercise, or misuse of laxatives. Unlike anorexia, where food intake is persistently restricted, bulimia involves a cyclical pattern of overconsumption and purging. This cycle creates significant metabolic, hormonal, and neurological disruptions that affect both physical health and brain function. At its core, bulimia reflects an imbalance between the brain's reward system, stress response, and the mechanisms that regulate self-control and satiety. During a binge episode, large amounts of food are consumed rapidly, often in a short period, accompanied by a sense of loss of control. The brain's dopamine system, which governs reward and motivation, is highly activated in response to the intake of highly palatable foods, particularly those rich in sugar and fat. This heightened reward response reinforces the behavior, making binge eating more likely to occur again in the future. At the same time, the prefrontal regions of the brain responsible for self-regulation and decision-making may be underactive, reducing the individual's ability to inhibit compulsive eating despite the awareness of negative consequences. Following a binge, compensatory behaviors such as vomiting or excessive exercise are initiated in an attempt to counteract the perceived harm from overeating. These behaviors create a temporary sense of relief or control, which is reinforced over time. However, repeated cycles of binging and purging dysregulate the body's natural hunger and satiety signals. Hormones such as leptin, which signals fullness, and ghrelin, which stimulates appetite, may become inconsistent, leading to difficulty recognizing true hunger cues. Insulin sensitivity can also be disrupted, impairing the body's ability to regulate blood sugar efficiently and contributing to metabolic challenges over time. The physical consequences of bulimia are extensive. Frequent vomiting can lead to electrolyte imbalances, dehydration, and damage to the esophagus and teeth. Laxative misuse can impair gastrointestinal function, while excessive exercise in a compensatory context can strain muscles and joints. Over time, these repeated cycles place stress on the cardiovascular system and other organs, increasing the risk of long-term health complications. The combination of physiological stress and hormonal disruption reinforces the brain's maladaptive patterns, creating a self-perpetuating cycle that is difficult to break. Psychologically, bulimia is often intertwined with stress, anxiety, and emotional regulation difficulties. Binge episodes may serve as a coping mechanism for intense emotions or environmental pressures, providing temporary relief through activation of the brain's reward circuits. However, the subsequent guilt, shame, or fear of weight gain triggers compensatory behaviors, which reinforce the cycle. This interaction between emotional states and eating behaviors underscores the complexity of bulimia, demonstrating that it is not solely a matter of willpower, but a disorder rooted in both neurobiology and environmental factors. Treatment for bulimia requires a comprehensive approach that addresses both the physiological and psychological components. Cognitive behavioral therapy helps retrain maladaptive thought patterns related to food, body image, and emotional coping, while structured nutrition plans restore normal eating patterns and stabilize blood sugar and hormone levels. Medical monitoring is often necessary to correct electrolyte imbalances and repair damage caused by purging behaviors. In addition, teaching stress management techniques and developing healthier coping mechanisms helps reduce reliance on binge-purge cycles. Over time, consistent intervention can recalibrate the brain's reward system, restore hormonal balance, and strengthen self-regulation pathways. Recovery involves breaking the cycle of binging and purging, normalizing hunger and satiety cues, and rebuilding a sustainable, healthy relationship with food. Understanding bulimia as a complex interaction of reward, self-control, and stress response systems highlights why a multifaceted, integrated approach is essential for effective treatment. Binge eating disorder is an eating disorder characterized by recurring episodes of consuming large amounts of food in a short period, often accompanied by a sense of loss of control. Unlike bulimia, these episodes are not followed by compensatory behavior such as vomiting or excessive exercise, which means that the caloric intake directly contributes to weight gain and metabolic stress. Binge eating disorder is strongly influenced by both psychological and physiological mechanisms, including stress, emotional regulation, and the brain's reward system, making it a complex condition that impacts health, metabolism, and mental well-being. The brain's reward pathways play a central role in binge eating. Foods that are high in sugar, fat, or salt strongly activate dopamine circuits, creating a sense of pleasure and reinforcing the behavior. Over time, repeated exposure to these foods during episodes of binge eating can sensitize the brain to food cues, increasing cravings and compulsive consumption. The prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for executive functions such as planning, impulse control, and decision-making, may be underactive or overwhelmed during these episodes. This imbalance between reward circuits and self-regulation contributes to the feeling of loss of control that characterizes binge eating episodes, making them difficult to interrupt once they begin. Emotional stress and negative affect are significant triggers for binge eating disorder. Cortisol, the stress hormone, can increase appetite, particularly for high-calorie foods, while simultaneously influencing the brain's reward system to make these foods more appealing. Episodes often occur in response to emotional distress, anxiety, or depression, creating a feedback loop where eating temporarily alleviates negative feelings, but is followed by guilt or shame, further exacerbating stress. This cycle reinforces binge behaviors and can make recovery challenging without strategies that address both the emotional and neurobiological components of the disorder. Hormonal and metabolic factors also contribute to binge eating disorder. Dysregulation of leptin, the hormone that signals satiety, and ghrelin, which stimulates appetite, can impair the body's ability to regulate hunger accurately. Blood sugar fluctuations resulting from irregular eating patterns or high intake of refined carbohydrates can amplify cravings and promote overeating. Over time, repeated binge episodes can contribute to insulin resistance, weight gain, and increased risk for metabolic disorders such as type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. The physiological consequences of binge eating disorder thus extend beyond immediate caloric excess to long-term health risks. Sleep and circadian rhythms play a supporting role in binge eating behaviors. Poor or irregular sleep can increase hunger and cravings through changes in leptin and ghrelin signaling, while also impairing the brain's ability to exercise self-control. Individuals who experience chronic sleep disruption are therefore more vulnerable to binge episodes, particularly in the evening hours when decision-making capacity is lower and stress levels may be higher. Establishing consistent sleep patterns is an important aspect of stabilizing appetite and supporting behavioral interventions. Treatment of binge eating disorder requires an integrated approach that addresses both behavior and underlying physiology. Cognitive behavioral therapy helps individuals recognize triggers, develop coping strategies, and build healthier relationships with food. Structured nutrition plans provide regular meals that stabilize blood sugar and reduce extreme hunger, which decreases the likelihood of binge episodes. Mindfulness-based practices and stress management techniques reduce reliance on food as a coping mechanism and help individuals respond more adaptively to emotional distress. Medical monitoring may also be necessary for individuals with metabolic complications, including insulin resistance, obesity-related issues, or cardiovascular risk factors. Exercise, when balanced and non-compulsive, supports metabolic health, improves insulin sensitivity, and can positively influence mood, complementing behavioral interventions. Over time, combining nutritional, psychological, and lifestyle strategies helps restore control over eating behaviors, recalibrate the brain's reward circuits, and improve long-term physical and mental health outcomes. Binge eating disorder, like other eating disorders, illustrates the complex interaction between brain function, emotional regulation, and metabolic physiology. Recovery involves not only reducing the frequency of binge episodes, but also rebuilding healthy eating patterns, stabilizing hormonal signaling, and developing resilience against stress. And healthy eating plays a critical role in maintaining metabolic stability, supporting brain function, and preventing the development or worsening of eating disorders. Unlike restrictive or compulsive eating patterns seen in disorders such as anorexia, bulimia, or binge eating, healthy eating emphasizes balance, nutrient density, and regularity. By providing the body with consistent fuel, healthy eating helps regulate hormones involved in hunger and satiety, stabilizes blood sugar levels, and reinforces positive associations between food and reward. These physiological and psychological effects form the foundation for both physical health and mental well-being. One of the most important aspects of healthy eating is its effect on hormones like leptin and ghrelin, which regulate energy balance. Leptin, produced by fat cells, signals to the brain when energy stores are sufficient, promoting satiety and reducing appetite. Ghrelin, secreted primarily by the stomach, stimulates hunger and signals the need for energy intake. Balanced and consistent meals help maintain predictable fluctuations in these hormones, allowing individuals to recognize natural hunger cues and avoid overeating or undereating. In contrast, irregular or highly restrictive eating patterns can disrupt these signals, contributing to cycles of extreme hunger or reduced appetite that are common in eating disorders. Blood sugar regulation is another key component influenced by healthy eating. Consuming balanced meals that include protein, complex carbohydrates, and healthy fats slows glucose absorption and prevents rapid spikes and crashes in blood sugar. Stable blood sugar levels support steady energy throughout the day, reduce cravings for high-calorie foods, and improve focus and cognitive performance. When meals are irregular or overly reliant on refined sugars and simple carbohydrates, insulin levels fluctuate dramatically, promoting fat storage and reinforcing maladaptive eating behaviors. The brain's reward system also benefits from healthy eating patterns. Food intake activates dopamine pathways, providing a sense of pleasure and reinforcement. When meals are balanced and predictable, these reward pathways function optimally, supporting healthy associations with food. In contrast, restrictive or compulsive eating behaviors can alter reward signaling, leading to heightened cravings, emotional reliance on food, or avoidance of eating altogether. By reinforcing regular, balanced consumption, healthy eating retrains the brain to experience food as nourishment rather than stress relief or punishment. Psychologically, healthy eating supports emotional regulation and reduces stress-related eating behaviors. Structured eating schedules and nutrient-dense meals create a sense of stability and predictability, which can reduce anxiety surrounding food and body image. Mindful eating practices, such as paying attention to hunger and fullness cues, further enhance awareness of the body's needs, decreasing impulsive or compulsive food intake. Over time, these practices strengthen the neural circuits responsible for self-regulation, improving the ability to make conscious, deliberate choices around food. Healthy eating also protects long-term physical health by providing essential vitamins, minerals, and macronutrients necessary for cellular repair, hormone synthesis, and immune function. Adequate protein supports muscle maintenance and neurotransmitter production. Healthy fats support brain function and cell signaling, and fiber-rich carbohydrates aid digestion and promote satiety. Consistent nutrient intake reduces the physiological stress associated with deficiencies and prevents metabolic disruptions that can exacerbate disordered eating patterns. Social and environmental factors reinforce healthy eating as well. Shared meals, supportive eating environments, and exposure to diverse, balanced foods help normalize healthy patterns and reduce the impact of external pressures or cultural diet trends. By integrating consistent, nutrient-dense meals with mindful awareness and supportive social contexts, individuals can maintain metabolic stability, reinforce positive brain signaling, and foster a sustainable, healthy relationship with food that protects against the development of eating disorders. Overall, healthy eating serves as the foundation for both physical and mental resilience. By supporting hormone balance, stabilizing blood sugar, reinforcing brain reward pathways, and providing essential nutrients, balanced nutrition enables the body and brain to function optimally. It establishes predictable patterns that reduce vulnerability to extreme behaviors, and recovery from eating disorders requires a comprehensive approach that addresses both the physiological and psychological components of the condition. Eating disorders such as anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating are not simply the result of willpower or lifestyle choices. They are complex interactions between brain function, hormonal regulation, emotional coping, and environmental influences. As a result, effective treatment must work on multiple levels simultaneously to restore healthy eating patterns, normalize hormone signaling, repair physical damage, and retrain neural circuits involved in reward, self-control, and emotional regulation. Structured nutrition is a cornerstone of recovery. Regular meals composed of balanced nutrients, including proteins, complex carbohydrates, healthy fats, and fiber, help stabilize blood sugar levels and restore normal appetite signaling. For individuals recovering from restrictive disorders, gradually increasing caloric intake is necessary to rebuild lean tissue, improve metabolic rate, and restore hormonal function. In cases of bulimia or binge eating disorder, consistent meal timing reduces extreme hunger and prevents the triggers that often lead to binge episodes. Over time, predictable eating patterns recalibrate the brain and body, allowing natural hunger and fullness cues to reassert themselves and reducing reliance on maladaptive coping strategies. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and other psychological interventions target the distorted thought patterns and emotional triggers that contribute to disordered eating. In anorexia, therapy focuses on body image distortion, fear of weight gain, and rigid control behaviors, helping individuals develop healthier attitudes toward food and self. In bulimia, CBT addresses the binge-purge cycle, teaching coping strategies to manage urges and stress without resorting to food manipulation. For binge eating disorder, therapy emphasizes emotional regulation, impulse control, and strategies for managing triggers that lead to excessive consumption. Through repeated practice, these approaches retrain the brain's reward system, strengthen prefrontal control over impulses, and reduce the psychological reinforcement of disordered behaviors. Stress management techniques complement both nutritional and cognitive strategies. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, which can exacerbate cravings, disrupt appetite regulation, and increase emotional reactivity. Mindfulness practices, meditation, breathing exercises, and gentle physical activity help reduce stress levels and create an environment in which healthy eating patterns can take root. Reducing stress also supports hormonal balance, improves sleep, and enhances cognitive function, all of which are necessary for sustained recovery. Medical monitoring is essential to address the physiological consequences of eating disorders. Individuals with anorexia may require evaluation for electrolyte imbalances, cardiovascular strain, bone density loss, and other complications from prolonged caloric restriction. Those with bulimia may need monitoring for gastrointestinal damage, dental erosion, and dehydration due to repeated purging. Managing these physical effects not only protects long-term health, but also reinforces the recovery process by stabilizing the body's systems and allowing the brain to focus on relearning healthy behaviors rather than coping with acute physiological stress. Support from family, peers, and healthcare professionals strengthens recovery by providing accountability, reinforcement, and a safe environment for practicing new eating behaviors. Social support helps reduce isolation, normalize food-related experiences, and buffer against external pressures or cultural messages that may exacerbate disordered eating. Integrating social, nutritional, psychological, and medical strategies creates a holistic framework in which recovery becomes sustainable rather than temporary. Ultimately, recovery from eating disorders is a gradual process that involves retraining the brain and body simultaneously. By combining structured nutrition, therapy, stress management, medical oversight, and social support, individuals can restore hormonal balance, normalize metabolism, and develop a healthier relationship with food. This multi-layered approach addresses the underlying mechanisms of disordered eating, making it possible to break maladaptive cycles, stabilize behavior, and support long-term physical and mental well-being. Environmental and social factors play a significant role in the development, maintenance, and recovery from eating disorders. While physiological, hormonal, and neurological mechanisms contribute to conditions such as anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating disorder, the surrounding environment shapes behaviors, perceptions, and attitudes toward food and body image. Social pressures, cultural norms, media influence, and interpersonal relationships can either reinforce disordered eating patterns or provide a supportive context for recovery, making the management of these external factors a critical aspect of treatment and prevention. Cultural ideals about body shape and weight exert a powerful influence on eating behaviors. Societies that emphasize thinness or promote dieting trends create environments where individuals, particularly adolescents and young adults, are more likely to internalize unrealistic standards. These internalized ideals can lead to chronic dissatisfaction with body image, triggering restrictive eating, binging, or purging behaviors as attempts to achieve or maintain the perceived ideal body. Over time, exposure to such cultural pressures can strengthen maladaptive neural circuits associated with reward, self-control, and body evaluation, reinforcing disordered eating behaviors. Media exposure further amplifies these pressures. Social media platforms, television, magazines, and online content frequently showcase idealized body types and diet trends, often presenting them as normative or attainable. Repeated exposure to these messages can heighten social comparison and exacerbate anxiety about appearance, which may trigger restrictive or compensatory behaviors. Algorithms on social media often reinforce these patterns by delivering content aligned with prior interactions, creating a feedback loop that perpetuates harmful body image messages and unhealthy eating behaviors. Peer and family influences are also significant environmental factors. Families that place excessive emphasis on weight, food, or appearance can inadvertently contribute to the development of disordered eating, while supportive families can buffer against these risks. Similarly, peer groups that prioritize dieting, fitness extremes, or appearance can influence behaviors, particularly during adolescence when social acceptance is highly salient. Conversely, environments that normalize balanced eating, encourage body positivity, and model healthy coping strategies create protective conditions that reduce vulnerability to disordered eating. Stressful or high-pressure environments can also contribute to disordered eating by increasing reliance on food as a coping mechanism. Academic, professional, or social stressors elevate cortisol levels, which can trigger cravings for high-calorie foods and increase emotional eating. Without supportive structures or coping strategies, individuals may develop maladaptive patterns such as binging, purging, or restrictive behaviors to manage stress or regain a sense of control. Environments that provide opportunities for stress management, mindfulness, and emotional support reduce these triggers and promote adaptive coping mechanisms. Creating supportive environments is critical for recovery from eating disorders. Structured settings where meals are predictable, free from judgment, and accompanied by guidance or supervision can help retrain the body's hunger and satiety signals. Reducing exposure to media or social content that promotes unrealistic body standards can also help stabilize psychological states. Peer support groups, family therapy, and positive social interactions reinforce healthier attitudes toward food, body image, and self-worth. Education about nutrition, body awareness, and media literacy equips individuals with tools to critically evaluate external pressures, reducing susceptibility to harmful messaging. Teaching resilience, emotional regulation, and mindful eating strategies within social contexts empowers individuals to navigate environmental triggers without resorting to disordered behaviors. Over time, repeated exposure to positive environmental and social cues strengthens neural circuits associated with self-regulation, reward, and adaptive coping, making healthy eating behaviors more sustainable. Ultimately, environmental and social factors interact with biological and psychological mechanisms to influence eating behaviors. Recognizing and managing these factors is essential for prevention, treatment, and long-term recovery. By fostering supportive environments, reducing exposure to harmful pressures, and promoting resilience and awareness, individuals are better able to develop and maintain healthy eating patterns, stabilize emotional responses, and protect against the development or recurrence of eating disorders. By addressing environmental and social influences alongside physiological and psychological factors, recovery and prevention of eating disorders become more effective and sustainable. Supportive family dynamics, positive peer interactions, mindful media consumption, and educational strategies create a framework in which healthy eating patterns can take root and thrive. When combined with structured nutrition, therapy, and stress management, these environmental supports help stabilize hormones, reinforce adaptive brain circuits, and promote emotional resilience. Over time, individuals develop a balanced relationship with food and body image, empowering them to maintain long-term physical health, mental well-being, and overall life satisfaction.